Hello, thank you all for joining our Mac Kids School and Library Buzz panel. I'm Mary Van Aken, Director of Publicity at Mac Kids.
And I'm Kristen Luby, Marketing Manager at Mac Kids. Today we're thrilled to introduce to you 3 authors of upcoming titles that we know are going to be favorites in your libraries.
If you want to watch a preview of our entire Winter 2021 list, visit our website at bit.ly/winter21preview. We preview picture books, middle grade, and young adult titles publishing between January and April of 2021. The event also includes a special guest appearance from Katherine Applegate revealing the cover of her next standalone middle grade novel, Willowdene, coming fall 2021.
Here's a quick look at the picture books featured in our Winter 2021 preview. We have everything from new picture books by award-winning creators Matthew Cordell and Nguyen Pham, exciting debuts, and top-notch nonfiction. Today, we're joined by Lydia M. Sigworth, author of Dear Librarian, which is going on sale June 1st, 2021. Lydia M. Sigworth is an author and children's librarian in Wisconsin. Being a librarian has been her dream job since she was a small child. Lydia currently lives in Platteville, Wisconsin with her family. Her absolute favorite thing to do is to talk books with budding bookworms. Dear Librarian is her debut picture book. You can find her online at Library Lydia. Take it away, Lydia.
My name is Lydia Sigwarth, and I'm honored to share with you today my story. When I was 5 years old, my father had to leave his job as the manager of a restaurant in Denver. My parents had 7 children, and the loss of their one source of income was, as you can imagine, quite frightening. As many families do when facing financial instability, my parents packed us up and moved us to Iowa to be closer to family and for a job for my dad. For the next 6 months, my family relied on friends and family for shelter. My father was working long, hard days at a new restaurant, and it was a difficult time for my family. But I didn't realize until adulthood how serious my family's situation had been, because for me, that part of my childhood was fondly known as the year we lived at the library. My parents didn't want to overburden the friends and families that were letting us stay with them, so most days my mom would pack up my siblings and I and take us to the public library. The Carnegie Stout Public Library was my family's only stable home for that year. We went almost every day, all day. We read, we did homework, and we played for hours. I remember my little brother taking a nap on my sister's lap while she quietly read Berenstain Bear books to me during those long afternoons. During this time, any trauma of homelessness was completely overshadowed by my undying love and affection for the children's librarian, a woman I only knew as Mrs. S. To me, Mrs. S was Wonder Woman in a cardigan. I couldn't wait to see her every morning. I would climb the stairs to the children's department and make a beeline for her desk. And I would explain to her very specifically, probably quite poorly, exactly what book I had my heart set on that day. This created a beautiful friendship between the two of us. She would lead me through the stacks looking for the perfect book. And then she would sit right down on the floor and listen to me prattle on about all my thoughts. These little moments with a woman whose full name I didn't even know, this is what I remember from that year. Every time I came, she would have a list of suggestions that she'd thought of since I last came. It created an impression on me that she thought about me all the time, even when I wasn't there. The funny thing is, I didn't even like to read. As a child, I was much more concerned with playing outside, chasing my brother, and getting very muddy than I was with sitting inside, learning to read and write. My mother was terrified that I would become a feral child and never learn anything. See, Mrs. S knew I didn't like reading, but she knew I liked her. So she made the library fun and safe and exciting. And by the end of the year, I was reading voraciously. Eventually, my family got back on their feet. My dad got a promotion, we found a house, and eventually my parents became financially stable enough to become small business owners. And we moved to a small town in Wisconsin. The very first thing I wanted to do when we moved was visit the public library. I missed Mrs. S But I knew even then that she'd already done enough. She'd given me a place to go, a place that was mine, a place where I felt loved and understood during a time in my life where nothing felt safe or sure. She made the library a port in a storm for a homeless child and her family. A few years ago, I was in a meeting about homelessness in libraries. The presenter shared the definition of homelessness as an individual with an unstable or non-permanent housing situation. In that moment, the memories of that time, those childhood days spent in the library, hit me so strongly I had to stubbornly hold back tears. I realized that my family had been homeless and I never even realized it. I was so thankful because that library, because of Mrs. S, I only had good memories of what could have been very dark days. I instead only remembered happy days spent at the library, feeling loved, understood, cared for, and safe. I don't know who I would be if it wasn't for that library and if it wasn't for Mrs. S. She gave me my passion and my life purpose. It made me who I am, and I am forever grateful for that. In an attempted recompense, I became a librarian, and I spend my days trying to provide that safe, welcoming environment to the children in my community. After that meeting, I decided I needed to find Mrs. S. I needed to thank her. And after years of searching, with the aid of This American Life, I found her, resulting in one of the most amazing experiences of my entire life. They say not to meet your heroes, but she was the exception to that rule. Sometimes I had assumed that my memory had been playing tricks on me, that there couldn't possibly be a person with that much patience and kindness. But I discovered that there was. She was a person who could make me feel at home in a public space. And I can tell you now, with the certainty of an adult perspective, that she really is just that magical. I sat in Deborah Stevenson's office. We held hands and we cried with each other for an hour after not seeing each other for 20 years. After meeting Deb, I knew I had to tell the world about her, to share how one librarian's kindness can change a life. I'm so lucky that Macmillan was able to bring together an amazing team, including my talented illustrator, Romina Galata, to tell this story. The story told in my debut picture book, Dear Librarian, coming to library shelves everywhere this June. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Next up, we're highlighting a middle grade title from our Winter 2021 list. Again, to hear us talk more middle grade titles, including new books from favorite authors like Gary Paulson, Kimberly Willis Holt, and Barbara O'Connor, as well as exciting debuts like The Comeback and The Leap, visit bit.ly/winter21preview. Joining us today is Juliette Menendez, debut author and illustrator of LATINITAS, celebrating 40 Big Dreamers. LATINITAS is on sale February 23rd, and we are publishing a Spanish language edition later this year. Juliette is a Guatemalan American author and illustrator. While working as a bilingual teacher in New York City's public schools, Juliette noted the need for more books that depicted children like the ones in her classroom. She studied design and illustration in Paris and now spends her days with her watercolors and notebook, writing and illustrating her first children's book, LATINITAS. You can find her online at juliettemenendez.com.
Before I begin, I just want to thank all of you, librarians and educators, for everything you do. I am very happy to get the chance to talk about this project that means so much to me with a group of people I respect so much. A little bit about me. I am Juliette Menendez, the author and illustrator of LATINITAS, and as you can probably tell from my name, I am bicultural. I spent my childhood between the United States and Guatemala, and like many bicultural children, I never really felt like I belonged in either place. When I first got to the United States, right before my 4th birthday, I would play in the corner with my dolls, and when other children would come over and ask me if they could play too, I would tell them, mis muñecas solo hablan en español. Sorry, my dolls only speak Spanish. I didn't want to admit that I was shy about playing in English. Then, only a few years later, when I went back to Guatemala for second grade, my father asked me to sing one of my favorite songs that I had sung before I had left. It was about a little cat. When Gatita came out instead of Gatita, he immediately invited my cousins over and entrusted them with getting my Guatemalan accent back. I was shy all over again. When I became a public school teacher, I didn't want my bilingual students to ever feel like they had to choose between their cultures and identities. I always tried to make sure the books and resources I had celebrated their different backgrounds. But like many of you, I could see that there were far fewer resources than the ones my students deserved. The idea for Latinitas came to me back in 2014 while working up in Inwood and Spanish Harlem as an art teacher. My students at the time were mainly Dominican, Puerto Rican, and Mexican. But when I would walk through the halls of their schools, the posters on the walls were of people like Einstein, Picasso, and Benjamin Franklin. There weren't posters of anyone who looked like my students or who came from similar backgrounds. So I started researching Latinx history, trying to come up with ideas for men and women to include. But I kept noticing that something very important was missing: women. And when I did find them, they were being relegated to footnotes. If there was anything that was going to bring out the feminist in me, it was that. So I decided to dedicate this project to celebrating mis paisas, Latina women. As I delved into the research, I couldn't believe all of the fascinating stories I was finding. I was beyond excited to learn about Latinas like Evelyn Miralles, who was NASA's first virtual reality engineer, and Victoria Santa Cruz, who created her own theater to feature Black artists and musicians and directed, wrote, choreographed, and composed the music for their shows. And thanks to a lucky encounter with a little girl at a library who insisted I should include a forensic anthropologist because that's what she wants to be when she grows up, I found out about Mercedes Doretti too, digging up the evidence of past war crimes to fight for justice. The more I found out, the more I realized that posters weren't going to be enough. I knew these stories needed to be told, and that is when Latinitas became a book. As soon as I began thinking of these women as part of a collection, I knew it was important to include women from all over Latin America, as well as the United States and across history too. It is so important for children, especially young Latinas, to see themselves within a larger feminist context, to see how women from different ethnicities, races, cultures, and backgrounds have influenced each other and played their parts in the narrative. I wanted children to know that their ancestors, like Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, have been fighting for them, calling out the patriarchy and the elite since the 1600s, and that activists like Berta Cáceres and Rigoberta Menchú, who have fought to protect indigenous communities and land from being exploited, are part of the very same story of equality and freedom. And from the beginning, I knew it was important to make these women relatable. I wanted children to feel pride in their heritage, of course, but I also wanted them to see that no matter how incredible these Latinas' accomplishments might be, they started out as little girls too, playing, making mistakes, finding themselves, and discovering their interests. I wanted children to be able to see themselves in these women and think, I could do that. So I brought together this book with as much care and love as I possibly could put into it, doing my best to honor each of these remarkable women. I read and researched everything I could find to create what I hope are memorable stories and illustrations. I hand-painted each illustration using the colors and symbols of neighborhoods and landscapes in both Latin America and Latinx communities in the United States. I hope that you, as well as the children in your lives, enjoy this celebration. I hope you feel pride reading these stories and see that each of us are part of this narrative, making and taking part in history, and have never just been on the sidelines observing it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I can't wait for each of you to get the chance to read Latinitas in February.
Thank you, Juliet. Finally, we're excited to preview a young adult title from our Winter 2021 list. To hear more about our Winter 2021 YA list, visit bit.ly/winter21preview. We're looking forward to our debuts, including Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Woolley and What Beauty There Is by Corey Anderson, as well as new titles from some of our most critically acclaimed authors, including Aidan Thomas, Anna Marie McElmore, and June Her. Today, Randi Pink joins us to preview Angel of Greenwood, which just went on sale January 12th. Randi is the author of Girls Like Us, a school library journal best book of 2019, and Into White. She lives with her family and 2 rescue dogs in Birmingham, Alabama. Find her online at IamRandiPink.com.
I'm Randi Pink, and it has been the honor of my life to write Angel of Greenwood. Angel of Greenwood is the historical fiction story of Angel and Isaiah, brilliant, creative, progressive teenagers, their heads filled with ideas on how Black folks in 1921 can continue to rise. They spend the entire first half of the novel walking tree-lined streets of Greenwood, debating and reciting from memory the writings of W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, reading and exchanging books and falling in love, surrounded by Black excellence of Black Wall Street. But then comes the second half of the novel. Writing any piece of historical fiction is like walking a razor-thin balance beam. Attempting to hold together truth and imagination is a challenge, but especially when writing about the Tulsa Race Massacre, which, until recently, has not been covered in much of our curriculum. So, what started the Tulsa Race Massacre? On May 30th of 1921, in the Drexel Building in Tulsa, 19-year-old Dick Rowland, a Black shoe shiner, got on an elevator with Sarah Page, a white elevator operator. The doors closed, and when they were alone, Sarah screamed. That singular scream set into motion the leveling of 40 prosperous blocks of Black Wall Street. In the following excerpt from my novel, Angel of Greenwood, Greenwood itself speaks. From your blood I rose. Brick by brick I was built with tired hands that deserved rest. You, Black, beautiful, never broken. I prayed for you to thrive and watched with pride when you did. I wanted to touch your shoulder and whisper my pride into your ear, but I could not. So I showed myself in the quiet ways. But yesterday, a white woman's scream swung the atmosphere so far that I could not catch it. Her scream lit an angry brew, fueling and feeding a starving mob whose hunger was not for food. Her scream echoed through newspapers and living rooms and up and down sidewalks until today, the 31st day of May in the hopeful year of 1921, when the brew has overflowed. That excerpt is the most challenging and maybe the most powerful bit of writing I've ever done in my life. And believe me, I've done a lot. Since childhood, I've been searching for my stride as a writer, and I believe I'm finally finding it in historical fiction. But I do not take the weight of historical fiction lightly, especially a story as important as this. Because while Angel and Isaiah are fictional characters, the leveling of Black Wall Street unfortunately happened. A white woman's scream did swing the atmosphere in Tulsa that day. While the racial climate was already at a fever pitch, that scream, like so many others in US history, set off the flow of events that led to an immeasurable amount of financial, emotional, and generational pain that no single book could ever do justice. My hope is that Angel of Greenwood helps to bring this story more into the light of history. For nearly 100 years, the Tulsa Massacre has been left out of our books for the most part. So it is up to us, writers, creators, teachers, and librarians, to take it upon ourselves to tell the story to anyone who will take the time, sit, and listen to it. It is my sincere hope that you enjoy and share Angel of Greenwood.
Thanks, Randy. That's a wrap for our 2021 ALA Midwinter Buzz event. Thank you all for joining us today. While we wish we were with you in person, this virtual conference is definitely the next best thing.
Thank you all so much for joining us. You can find more resources at mackidsschoolandlibrary.com and tweet us at mackidsSL. See you on the virtual conference floor.